The Talisman of the Young Woman. This is the story of a man who just moved into a new apartment. On the first day, after he finished moving in, he felt exhausted, so he leaned back to rest, and noticed something on the ceiling. He pulled it down, and at that moment, he felt a pair of eyes watching him from the opposite apartment. She was staring at him, but he thought she couldn't be looking at his room, so he closed the curtains. The next day, while he was going to work and taking out the trash, he encountered the same woman, staring at him. He was so startled that he dropped the trash bag and ran straight to work. Out of fear, he tried to persuade a friend to help him clean his apartment, but his friend was busy that evening, so he returned home alone. When he arrived at his door and was about to unlock it, he found that his apartment was not locked. He thought he must have forgotten to lock it that morning. Once he entered the room, he noticed that something similar to what he had pulled down yesterday was stuck to the ceiling in the same spot. He was very surprised, because he thought he had removed it the day before. As he was about to reach out to pull it down, a woman suddenly rushed towards him, shocking him momentarily. At first he thought she was a ghost, but it turned out to be just a deranged woman who had intruded. He wondered what she was doing in his room, especially since she made the floor dirty by walking in with her shoes. While he was using a cloth to wipe away her footprints, suddenly a talisman fell from behind the table. But when he looked closer, he found many talismans stuck to the back of the table. He was very shocked and didn't know what it meant, and he tried to tear those talismans off while complaining that it must be the work of that woman. After he had destroyed all the talismans, he felt something in the area, and when he looked up, he saw many spirits staring at him. Sunbai. A man woke up in a hospital bed. The doctor said he had an accident, falling off a cliff, and had lost consciousness. Fortunately, someone from the village found him and brought him to the hospital. The doctor mentioned that he had a broken leg and needed to be observed for another night, and if everything was fine, he could go home the next day. At that moment, a group of old men was staring at him with frightening eyes, which he had felt earlier, as if they were discussing something among themselves while looking at him. He didn't think much of it, and the doctor told him to rest well and walked away. That night, the pain from his broken leg kept him awake, and he could still hear the group of old men talking not far from him. He recalled the way they had been staring at him, and after a while, he heard them whispering, saying, "Don't let it escape. We can't leave it alone. It's too late now." But then the voices went silent. Just as he was about to lie down, he was startled to see the shadows of the three old men standing close by. He was very scared, but could only force himself to close his eyes and sleep. The next evening, he left the hospital, still thinking about the frightening old men. As he walked out to the front of the building, he suddenly heard some sounds coming from the hospital's upper floors. He saw the shadows of three people, likely the old men, dancing on the stairs, which was a traditional Japanese blessing for good luck. He thought that perhaps those old men were actually good people who came to bless him. After he got into a taxi, the driver greeted him as usual, and he told the driver that a patient in the same room had danced a blessing for him before he left. However, it seemed a bit strange, as it looked less like a blessing and more like a gesture of letting go. When the driver heard this, he realized that such a gesture was unlikely to be a blessing, but rather a sanbai, which is a play on words from banzai, and means the opposite, cursing. Suddenly the driver stopped the car and ordered him to get out, but it was too late, as a truck suddenly came speeding towards them. The family rules. This is the story of a boy named Toshiharu, who has just moved back to the countryside with his family. Upon returning, he notices that more people are coming to the house than he has ever seen before. He hears his grandfather telling his father that they must laugh until morning, because his father, being married, is now part of the family and must follow the traditions that have been passed down. His father is curious about why they need to laugh until dawn, and the grandfather explains that they are hungry for human fear, hatred, and sorrow. Toshiharu recalls seeing his grandfather possessed and driven mad, a memory he cannot forget. The only thing they can do is gather all their family members every year on this night and laugh together, as this ritual has been passed down through generations. It shows that they are happy, and thus the spirits will not come close. After a while, his father tells Toshiharu that he must sleep alone tonight, because he, his mother, and the others in the family have important matters to attend to. When Toshiharu repeatedly asks why, his father makes a scary face and says it's just something that happens late at night. That night, Toshiharu feels the urge to urinate and decides to walk out to the bathroom. On the way, he hears the sound of many people laughing loudly, so he tries to crack the door open to peek. But he gets caught, and the door is opened to reveal Toshiharu, who is trembling with fear. Everyone stops laughing for a moment, and the lights outside go out, plunging everyone into a feeling of fear. Suddenly, they encounter something in front of them, before it rushes towards them immediately. The hare. This is the story of an elementary school teacher at a school who has to work late that day. Finally, she finishes her work, but when she looks at the clock again, it is already very late. She still has one last step, which is to photocopy her work. However, when she presses the start button on the machine, the school bell suddenly rings, startling her. She wonders why it is ringing at this hour. The copier then starts printing her work, but she notices that there are creases or scratches, and some fine hair stuck to the document she is copying. She opens the machine to check if there is something wrong, but as soon as she pulls out the first document, she is shocked because she sees what looks like a face of someone in the machine. When she looks again, she sees nothing and thinks she must be tired and imagining things. So she decides to photocopy again. This time, when she presses the start button, the machine shakes and makes a loud noise, as if something is jammed. She looks around, realizing that at this late hour, there should be no one else around, before she kicks the machine with her foot. It seems her efforts have paid off, as the machine starts working normally again, and the documents are printed smoothly this time, without any marks like before. However, just as she is about to walk away, the machine suddenly starts printing her documents non-stop, and every sheet that comes out has strands of hair on it. The more documents the copier produces, the more the hair appears, shocking her with what is happening. She tries to turn off the machine, but it refuses to stop and continues to print. Finally, she decides to unplug it, and the machine stops working. At that moment, she is sweating and wondering what is going on. She opens the machine to check, only to be horrified by what she sees: a large amount of hair stuck to her documents. Before she can recover from her shock, the hair slowly moves into the paper slot. She is stunned and doesn't know what to do, so she gathers her courage and pulls the paper slot out. But she sees nothing unusual. She sighs in relief and closes the slot again, muttering to herself about the bizarre incident, rubbing her eyes due to fatigue. Just as she closes the machine, a woman with long hair and wide open eyes stands next to the copier. Next floor. This story is about a family that went to buy a birthday gift for their 5-year-old son at a department store. However, on that day, the father had urgent work and could not celebrate with his son, which made the child cry loudly. The father tried to comfort him and said, "It's okay, son. Your mother will take you to buy a gift." The child calmed down, but the mother remarked that she couldn't help, since the father's work was more important than them, suggesting they should celebrate just the two of them instead. Although the father was not pleased with what the mother said to the child, he still had to go to work. He walked into the elevator to go down, and looked at the mother and child with a pitiful gaze. As the elevator doors closed, he thought to himself, "But who am I working so hard for?" Before Rit descended to the 4th floor of the women's clothing section, the elevator attendant asked if anyone was going to this floor. He looked at the attendant and noticed that she spoke in a monotone, lifeless manner, and the elevator's floor indicator was also broken. When the elevator reached the 4th floor, the doors opened, which was surprising because the entire floor was dark. Even more surprising was the people standing in front of him, who slowly moved out of the elevator as if they had something to ask. However, before he could ask, the elevator doors closed, leaving him to wonder what that floor was about and why those people went in there. Before he could resolve his curiosity, he descended to B13. The elevator doors opened again, and this floor was strange as well, with only one red light bulb on, creating a dim and eerie atmosphere. He cautiously leaned out to look, and suddenly he heard the sound of footsteps rapidly approaching, followed by a small man screaming as he rushed in. But fortunately, the elevator doors closed just in time. He was so shocked that he could barely breathe, and fell down, asking the elevator attendant what just happened. She had seen it right. The elevator attendant didn't respond, so he said to forget it, and asked her to take him back to the previous floor. The attendant remained silent as he approached her, reaching out to touch her, but she fell down. It turned out she wasn't a person, but just a mannequin, which made him even more frightened. After a while, the elevator doors opened with a ding, revealing the same floor he had just left with the mother and child. He muttered, "Finally, I made it, I made it," and walked past the mannequin, still wondering what kind of strange event had just occurred. A moment later, he noticed that the floor was completely empty, and the music from the department store began to play, announcing that the store was about to close. The lights started to dim, getting closer to him, and the lights on the floor went out, leaving only the light from the elevator. Just as he was about to turn around and walk back, he saw that mannequin standing there again, just like before, while the elevator doors slowly began to close, along with her voice saying, "I hope you can fully relax during your personal time." Just before the elevator doors closed, her gaze fixed on him. The suffering of every day. This is also the story of a man who does nothing but work every day in and day out. Even though he complains to himself about how tired he is, he can only do that because he still has to keep working that day. On the train, he feels both exhausted and annoyed by the people who are chatting loudly throughout the entire carriage, and he thinks to himself, "Shut up, shut up, shut up already. Are these people so happy? Life must be so joyful for them. How annoying." While he is complaining about others in his mind, he notices something like a piece of meat or something on the shelf. He starts to wonder if it is a living thing, because it seems to move, but why has no one else noticed it? He just looks at it in confusion. Suddenly, the train brakes abruptly, and everyone is shocked as the train comes to a stop. An announcement is made that an accident involving a person has occurred, which in Japan means that a suicide has taken place. After the announcement ends, he turns back to look at that piece of meat, but now it has mysteriously disappeared. He begins to wonder if he imagined it. Yes, it must be, he thinks, because how could such a strange being be in a place like this? It must be because his body is so tired and worn out. The announcement sounds again, stating that they are assisting the accident victims and that it is necessary to turn off the lights in the entire train temporarily. After a moment, the lights go out, and he feels that today is truly a terrible day for him. In the dim light, he encounters the strange being once more. This time, it appears close to him, and he notices its mouth and eyes, which are staring at him while people whisper about the suicide incident. He continues to gaze at the strange being, and mutters to himself that he must be very tired, and thinks he should take a break. I will rest, forget about work, because if working hard leads to encountering something like this, I might as well quit, he thinks, as he closes his eyes in fear. Then the strange being slowly crawls towards him, crying out in pain and coldness, while he tells himself that he will rest, go to the hospital, and do things for himself. He starts calling out to God, and wonders if the hospital will hurt. But can it cure this hallucination? He suddenly thinks, is this hallucination really this clear? Their eyes meet, and he feels that it might not be a hallucination after all. Yes, yes. But why does it feel so cold, both painful and cold? No, I don't want to die yet. But wait, if I die, I probably won't feel cold anymore. No, what am I saying? Death hurts too. He begins to feel more confused, as the strange being moves on to him. No, no, I can't die, he thinks. But then another thought arises. Dying might be fun. He can't take it anymore. He is so tired. Finally, the strange being speaks up, saying, "Oh." Conflict. This story begins with a phone ringing in the middle of the night at the home of a girl named Yuko. She wakes up to the sound of the phone and wonders who is calling at this late hour. When she answers, it is her friend Mayumi, who is on the line with a trembling voice, as if something bad has happened. Yuko tells her to calm down before speaking. Mayumi explains that today, she and her boyfriend went for a drive and ended up at an abandoned hospital outside of town. They decided to test their courage there, and when they arrived, she felt like someone was watching them the whole time. She felt that the place was not safe, so she suggested they should leave, but he didn't listen to her. The more he saw her fear, the more he enjoyed it. He kept walking deeper inside without waiting for her. After that, they came across a locked room, and he said, "This is fun. We should try to get in there." He used a stone to break the lock, and no matter how much she tried to dissuade him, he wouldn't listen. After he got inside that room and came back out, he acted strangely. So what happened next? Yuko asked, as Mayumi remained silent. She said she was scared, so she ran away and called her. Mayumi then asked Yuko to stay at her house, because she didn't want to be in that crazy hospital anymore. Yuko agreed, and said that when she arrives, she can tell her more. Mayumi expressed her happiness, because she didn't want to endure being in such darkness and pain any longer. Yuko then asked what darkness and pain meant. Mayumi didn't answer, but just said that she had really gotten out of there. "I really got out, right?" While Yuko was confused by Mayumi's words, someone knocked loudly on the door, asking if this was Yuko's house, and if they could come inside. Yuko was stunned for a moment, realizing it was Toru's voice, and was puzzled about what Mayumi had just told her. Toru, standing at the door, explained that he and Mayumi had gone to test their courage at the abandoned hospital, and suddenly Mayumi had acted strangely, and went into a deep room alone. When he thought he had found Mayumi, he saw what looked like someone else's face on hers. "Is it Mom?" Yuko began to think about Mayumi's strange words, questioning whether she had really gotten out of there. What did darkness and pain mean that made her scared? This made her start to doubt Mayumi a bit. At that moment, she asked Mayumi to open the door for him. In the end, she agreed to open the door, and when she did, she encountered Toru in a terrifying state, asking her, "I really got out, right?" Goddess of the Umbrella. The story takes place during a summer holiday in Japan. A little boy, Takaru, visits his close friend Kenchan's house. While Kenchan is called by his mother to help with the watermelon, Takaru looks outside across the house and notices that, even on such a clear day, there is someone under an umbrella, making strange noises. While he is staring at the odd person across the house, Kenchan comes in with watermelon along with his father. His father comments that it's good if it doesn't rain since the weather around here can change frequently. Then Takaru speaks up saying, it might be true, considering that, even on such a clear day, there is someone waiting under an umbrella. Kenchan then asks, where is that? Takaru replies, over there by the bus stop. That woman holding the umbrella. As soon as Takaru answers like that, Kenchan's father, who was holding a plate of watermelon to serve, drops the plate, causing it to break, and exclaims, the goddess of the umbrella. Kenchan's father quickly calls for help, asking what to do when seeing the goddess of the umbrella, and receives the answer that salt should be placed in front of the house, which is a Japanese belief that salt is pure and can cleanse all impurities. Kenchan's mother then presses her son to make sure he didn't see what Takaru saw, and the answer he gives is that Takaru thinks he is the only one who saw it. That night, Takaru had to stay alone at Kenchan's house. Kenchan's father instructed Takaru to lock the house tightly, and emphasized that no matter what happens, he must not open the door until morning, and to place salt in front of the door. In the middle of the night, while Takaru was trying to sleep, he heard Kenchan outside the house asking him to open the door. Takaru opened it and found Kenchan had snuck out to bring him snacks, saying that his father was overreacting. In the morning, Kenchan invited Takaru to go catch beetles together. After they finished chatting, Kenchan walked back home, just as Takaru was turning back. He accidentally dropped his key and bent down to pick it up. When he looked up, he saw Kenchan again, but with a strange expression, standing at the door, asking Takaru to open the door for him once more. Takaru felt that his friend Kenchan had changed. His expression and words were different, and the salt he had placed in front of the door was slowly turning black. Kenchan pretended that if Takaru opened the door, his uncle would get him. As soon as Takaru locked the door, Kenchan's voice grew louder and more frantic, urging him to open the door. The lamp in the house began to flicker and dim, and the salt continued to turn black. Takaru might have sat down, curled up, and closed his eyes in the corner of the room until he accidentally fell asleep. When he woke up in the morning, he found that the salt had turned into black ash. Takaru's summer holiday ended quietly, but as he was walking out of the house, he noticed a woman in a broken-necked outfit, standing behind him, holding a red umbrella. This is the story of a mother and her daughter who are under a terrible curse. The daughter, affected by the curse, has her body and limbs covered in dark green bruises, marked by handprints. In such a state, she can only isolate herself in her room. After a while, her mother comes in to tell her that she has indeed found someone who can help her, but the daughter does not believe it. She has already been treated with many remedies, yet no one has been able to help her. The mother then tries to encourage her to have faith. The next day, the mother took her to a shrine. When the priest saw her condition, he said it seemed that her ancestors had once caused someone to bear a grudge. The mother asked why it had to be her daughter who had to carry the burden of the ancestors' grudge. She was very worried about her daughter, fearing what might happen, and began to cry. The priest then said, "Well, let's start preparing the ritual." That night, The priest performed an exorcism to drive away the evil, and the curse was lifted. The dark green bruises and handprints disappeared from her body. The mother expressed her deep gratitude to the priest, but requested to take her leave. After that, life of the girl who was cursed returned to normal. Until one day, a phone call came to the house, and the mother answered. The caller was the assistant of the priest who had previously helped her daughter. The mother expressed her gratitude, but was shocked to learn that the priest who had helped her daughter had passed away. At that time, the priest was concerned about the future of the girl until the very end of his life. He mentioned that all he could do was pray for the girl to live the rest of her life in good health, and also conveyed a message from the priest before he died. Meanwhile, her daughter was walking out of the house to go to school. Suddenly, bruises and handprints appeared on her neck, accompanied by a message from the priest which said, "I'm sorry. I truly cannot help you.